Creed Absolu Aventus.
Kind of a hot topic right now, right? Or is it just warm?
Do you guys still care about?
We're making a video about it anyway. Doesn't matter. Creed Absolu Aventus. Some of you have tried it. Many of you probably have not. It's a very expensive fragrance. I think its price is really what contributes the most to its controversy, but there have been a lot of people out there really defending it, saying it smells amazing, it's worth every penny, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, value is always subjective. Now, I have personal experience with Creed Absolu Aventus. I have not bought a bottle. I'm not sure if I ever will. A part of me is a little bit tempted to just to have it before it's completely gone and maybe will never return. But for now, I have been living with a decant that I got from my friends at DecantX. In fact, I don't even know how much is left in here. I have worn it a couple times. Yeah, I'm about halfway through this 5 milliliter decant. So I have a pretty good idea of how this fragrance wears, but this is barely half of the subject of today's video. We're talking about one of the first major clone / inspiration fragrances on this fragrance that I've seen, that I've come across, that is, in my opinion, of above average quality. I would even say good quality. And it comes from a brand that is known for their quality. Even comes down to this little bag, this beautiful bag that you can honestly like sleep on. It's so soft. Parfums Vintage. This is their newest release, and I know they put some thought and effort into making sure it was the way they wanted it to be. They call this Emperor Absolu. If you are familiar with the Emperor line, it is one of the several branches that they've created of fragrances that are intended to represent Creed Aventus in some facet. They have a lot of different representations and interpretations of the Creed Aventus DNA. The Emperor line is one of them. It happens to be my favorite line of the ones, and especially the original eau de parfum. Emperor Absolu, as you would imagine by the name and maybe even the bottle style, which is different from the rest, is intended to run parallel to Creed Absolu Aventus. When they told me they wanted to send this over, I said, of course, I'd love to know what it's like. I don't know if I have plans of getting the original, so maybe I would live with this, but again, I'm probably going to get the original at some point. Nonetheless, I have been spending the last several days with this fragrance, and I want to tell you what I think, how it compares to the original Creed Absolu Aventus, and if I think it's worth your time and money. But before we get into the meat of this comparison, I do want to let you guys know that we're going to do a giveaway, because why not? I have a fragrance I don't need. Honestly, it's not Emperor Absolu. It's actually one of their other newest fragrances that they created in commemoration of their 7-year anniversary, something like that. Unisex Intense. I actually did cover this fragrance in a couple of past videos. I will link to one of them up here if you want to check it out. I'm going to give this bottle away because they sent me 2 of them. So one of you guys will win this one. I will talk more about how to win the giveaway as we move through the video, so stay tuned. A few days ago, I received Emperor Absolu, and I put it on one hand, and I put my decant of Absolu Aventus on the other hand, and I did a good old-fashioned side-by-side comparison. And I came away with some thoughts. I took some notes here on my phone. I always have notes that I take when I'm doing comparisons. I'm gonna just keep things succinct here and read a little bit of what I wrote with my first initial impressions, so bear with me. So at first spray, the original, that is Absolu Aventus, to me is more pleasant and more natural smelling up close. Now, typically, side-by-side comparisons will be done up close. We're looking for nuances. We're looking for the depth and dimension of the fragrances, how they compare, how they evolve, all that stuff. Not typically what you would do when you wear it, but this is the enthusiast side of things, so to speak. So the first spray of Emperor Absolu, honestly, was not my favorite. I can't say I disliked it, but there was something about it that was a little bit sharp, a little bit harsh, a little bit jagged, so to speak. The original, again, a little bit more natural, but this opening with Emperor Absolu didn't last very long. Within the first maybe 2 to 5 minutes, that really toned down to something a whole lot more pleasant. So I wouldn't be afraid of that. After I put these fragrances on my hand, I actually went and did a workout and kind of kept a nose on them just to see how they would develop with heat, but mainly came back to them after the workout. And after the workout, I will say this, I deduced that I preferred the quality of Creed Absolu Aventus a little bit. The reason why is that it's more multi-dimensional to my nose, and it's a little bit more textural, you know, like the prickly quality of the spices, the dryness of the woods, things like that. I can smell into the fragrance. There's more of a 3-dimensional depth to the scent. Again, this is something you mainly get up close in the air, almost negligible. However, the one thing about Creed Aventus Absolu that I've struggled with thus far is that it turns into transparent smoke on my skin. Let me explain what I mean by that. It becomes elusive and simply difficult to detect. Now, I don't mind a little bit of teasing, a little bit of dancing that some fragrances can do. Stuff like Baccarat Rouge 540 or Molecule 01. When I've worn those fragrances, they dance in and out of perception, and you can't always smell them, but when you can, you really can, and then they're gone and they're just playing peekaboo. Aventus Absolu almost just starts leaving my skin. It starts to evacuate right away, and it simply makes it difficult to detect even as a skin scent just within the first hour. A lot of you guys know I don't mind skin scents as long as I can smell them, and it's not just like this up close. When I gave it my full wearing, which I sprayed pretty liberally from this decant, I remember having the same behavior, really struggling to detect it. It could be a case of olfactory fatigue from maybe an ingredient or two in it, but nonetheless, I can't really smell it that well when I wear it. From a bottle, maybe it'd be a different experience. Nonetheless, your mileage will always vary with performance, because I know some of you guys have claimed quite good performance out of Absolu Aventus. Now, the quality of Emperor Absolu is just as good as the quality from any other Parfums Vintage fragrance. When I said I preferred the Creed's quality over this, I don't prefer it because it's better quality, so to speak. I just prefer it because its nature is more of what I prefer out of my fragrances. Again, that multi-dimensionality quality I was talking about. However, by comparison, Emperor Absolu and most of Parfums Vintage's fragrances in terms of quality are much more rounded, much more smoothed over, not quite so multi-dimensional. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but as a result of that, this fragrance is just more full and present. It's just easier to detect, and it's just richer while still being fresh, and this makes it more noticeable. Now, just to let you guys know, I'm not going to do a note comparison side by side. I'm not worried about ingredients here. I'm more concerned with overall vibe and behavior. So not gonna see, well, they both have this note, they both have that note. We're not doing that, because that doesn't actually help you. Also, I can easily say that Emperor Absolu is not a one-to-one copy of Absolu Aventus. I don't believe it was intended to be. I think a lot of Parfums Vintage's fragrances, especially in their Aventus collection, they're not necessarily intended to be one-to-one copies. They do kind of have their own DNA. They have their own thing that makes them their own fragrances. So after that initial testing, I gave it a full wearing. I put on 4 full sprays of this, and it was really nice. In the air, I wasn't getting that sharpness that I referred to earlier. The quality was very good. It was present and noticeable. Fresh and uplifting, a little bit fruity, but definitely spicy and woody. Again, not as textural as the original, but still a good amount of elements going on. So a few hours later, I went out that night with Grace. I put on 5 more sprays just to see, because it had died down. It had been maybe 4 or 5 hours. It was still there, but it was closer to the skin. So I reapplied, and then we went out. So when you first spray it on, it's very fruity and full without being overly bright, which is similar to the original. There's definitely some dark woods. There's some slight spice in the background. Again, not quite as textural. And I can easily say that with the full wearing, again, the opening is way more pleasant, and the dry down is even better. I like the dry down even more than the opening, especially in the air. Longevity was good. At least 7 hours on my skin, maybe detecting it closely up to maybe the 9-hour mark. Again, performance will vary, and it helps that my wife was a fan. She said, you smell so good. So before I do my final wrap up here, I want to give away Unisex Intense. Once again, you can watch the video I linked to learn more about it, but I mean, whoever gets it, you're getting it for free, so I don't know if you really need to worry about what it smells like. But of course, if you want to learn more about it, there's information you can check out. But if you want to enter the giveaway, make sure you subscribe to the channel, make sure you like this video, and I want you to leave a comment in regards to the original Creed Absolu Aventus. If you've bought it, go ahead and let me know in the comment what you like about it or what you don't like about it. Just give me your general experience about having it, even a decant. If you have not tried it, go ahead and leave a comment saying whether or not you plan to try it and why. Either way, and I'll choose one winner at random to win this bottle of Unisex Intense. Let's move on to the final wrap up. As you guys know, I'm not much of a clone guy. There's only a handful of clones that I've truly enjoyed, that I can truly recommend, and honestly, I think all of them have been from Parfums Vintage over the years. I've been well acquainted with this brand since pretty much the start of this channel. Creed Absolu Aventus, more natural, more multi-dimensional, definitely smells high quality, but in my experience, hard to detect, which makes it a little bit hard to enjoy. Emperor Absolu definitely comes close, not a one-to-one. Again, I don't believe it is intended to be, but I do believe it can give you a similar vibe as Creed Absolu Aventus, and maybe even one that is just more noticeable, which may or may not make it more enjoyable. That is completely subjective, and we have to mention the price difference here. Now, Creed is under a lot of fire for their prices these days. A lot of people say they're not worth it. Once again, they've gone up and up and up, so it's hard to really say what you're paying for when you pay the retail price for Creed Absolu Aventus, which I think is like $545. I think it is popping up on some discounters for maybe under $400, which is cool. But if I'm not mistaken, in fact, I'm not even going to say if I'm not mistaken, I'm just going to look it up. Emperor Absolu from Parfums Vintage is $109 for 50 milliliters. That's the only size it comes in. You can get it in a variety of different bottle styles and colors. I honestly think this is the best one because it just represents the scent, I think, the best. Pretty big price difference. Again, I think you get good quality of a scent. I think it's a very pleasant wearing experience, and the performance, which I know is what people equate the most to the dollar amount, is good. Is it worth the money? I would say yes, it is worth the money if you've been on the fence with getting Creed Absolu Aventus because it's so expensive and you don't want to spend quite as much for a similar experience. That is my assessment of Parfums Vintage's brand new Emperor Absolu. I do enjoy it. I will be getting some wearing out of it. So whether or not you plan on entering the giveaway, I want to know, do you have plans to check this out? I always recommend trying the original first if you can, but I know even a decant is not cheap. So let's talk about it. We got lots to talk about down in the comments. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Peace. I'll see you in the next one.